Alright guys, welcome to the patch 11.13 notes. This patch has a few annoying things that I'll go over, but really it's not that... Okay, it actually is kind of a big patch. It's got the mobility changes, the Tom Kench rework, it's got some nerfs to some important champions, but yeah. First up is Aphelios. For those of you who don't know how Aphelios works, I'm not going to explain it because you don't really need to know how he works. Basically, Aphelios is going to deal more damage because his passive will give more damage. If you don't know what that means, that just means he'll deal more damage. He's also going to get more lethality, which means he'll deal more damage. For those of you who don't know how Aphelios works, this means he's going to deal more damage while he deals more damage. That's it. Kayn, he's not going to be able to use his W in terrain and not give you the visual notification. Kayn's W, his little, slash, especially in his blue form when he was in terrain, he could hide the visual and start one-shotting squishies. This is going to make it so he can't hide in terrain and therefore hide his W, which is a good change because he very much could one-shot squishies invisibly. It wasn't really that fun to fight. Solo Lee Sin is very overpowered. Because Solo Lee Sin maxes E, they are nerfing his E damage. It is a 40 damage nerf at the max rank, but if I'm going to be honest with you guys, I would have liked to have seen an early game nerf, because Lee Sin has 2 abilities with 100 base damage, which makes him extremely dominant. I think this is definitely going to tone him down, but considering how overpowered he was, we're still likely to see him in solo lanes. I think it might push him out. I'm like 50-50 on it. A 40 damage nerf is big, but on the other hand, it's not affecting his early game, and so we might still see him being used in solo lanes. They don't want him in solo lanes because, shocker, Lee Sin actually has very little counterplay. So when he gets in a solo lane, and you can't avoid him by avoiding the jungler, then there's some issues. Olaf got his health nerfed earlier, and now he's getting health per level increased. Olaf is doing quite bad right now, and they're trying to beef it up a little bit. I don't think this is really going to change very much. I think Olaf got nerfed really hard because of Gore Drinker, but then they nerfed Gore Drinker. Now they're trying to go back and buff his health. But if I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't see Olaf coming back. They nerfed his passive, and they nerfed his Q, and they nerfed his health, and they're giving him back some health per level. But remember, his health got nerfed by about 20. So there's 3 levels of health growth here that are basically just being counteracted. He already got his level 1 nerfed, right? So it's an early game champion. To get your early game tankiness nerfed, that's kind of a big deal. This isn't even that big of a buff to his health growth. In all honesty, I think this is counterproductive because I don't think Olaf is very good right now, and I don't think the issue was his health per level. It's a good buff, but maybe if they touched up his armor per level? I don't know. Anyway, this might help. Some people still play Olaf, so those people that still play him, they might enjoy having like 100 more health, I guess. Riven, this will do nothing. I can actually show you why this will do practically nothing. If we go to D2+, and we search by win rate, we'll see that Riven is a very large outlier. Look at this. This is a pretty large outlier. I'm sorting by win rate. This isn't even pick rate. We sort by pick rate. She sticks out like a sore thumb. This champion is busted right now. Absolutely busted. I made a video on it earlier, but I don't think people truly believe how broken this champion is. Pretty broken. A 10 health nerf on her shield isn't the biggest deal, because here's what you have to consider. Most champions can't fight into her shield, because if they blow all their damage on her shield to actually break it, then they won't have enough damage to kill her, so they typically save their cooldowns. Well, so nerfing her shield by 10 doesn't change that much. And this isn't a scaling nerf, it's not like 10 to 40, it's just 10 flat. Her early game is already extremely good, and so she's still going to scale just as well. Her shield is still going to be, like 600 HP late game, so this doesn't really do that much. I definitely don't think it's going to fix a 53 win rate. Rumble, so they changed Rumble, was it like 2 months ago now? He was perfectly fine, perfectly balanced, and now he's going to suck. Now, just to be clear, if I can I find Rumble here? Here's Rumble in the top lane, low pick rate, decent enough win rate, okay? Now, here's Rumble in the mid lane. Where you at, Rumble in the mid lane? He, once again, decent enough win rate, low pick rate. This change kills Rumble jungle. If you ever see anyone playing Rumble in the jungle, tell them to stop. What this cooldown change does is it means that he can no longer activate his overheat at level 1, which nerfs him substantially. This is game-changing for jungle Rumble. In addition, they're nerfing the movement speed. I think that this is basically a great show of Riot screwing up really hard. The champion was pretty balanced. They did the rework, and now they've had to do nothing but nerf him since then. In particular, they keep nerfing his survivability and his mobility. The issue is that once he procs overheat, he can one-shot, well, not one-shot, but he basically murders everyone in front of him very quickly. Instead of toning down their damage, they've nerfed his survivability and his mobility, and Riot just seems to love every champion being able to kill people instantly. They just don't like them being able to survive being able to be killed instantly. Now, this is the Tom Kentry work. Some of you guys might have been seeing the Tom Kentry work. I probably will make a video on the Tom Kentry work later. For now, they nerfed his health a little bit. They nerfed his armor a little bit. His armor at level 1 is still really good. His armor at level 18 is still pretty dang good. Amongst the highest, not the highest, but amongst the highest in the game. His health is still good. A little bit lower than it should be for a champion of his class, but still good. He's losing some damage on his autos. His Q is gaining missing health heal. The slow's getting nerfed really hard. His W and his ult are shifting. That's something that a lot of people need to pay attention to. He can also, if he stuns you with his Q, let me see here. Yes. He can now eat you with his ultimate if he stuns you with his Q. So that's a pretty big deal. I'm pretty sure that allows him to grab you. Like if you run away and you've got max acquired taste, he can now, and then, so that's kind of a big deal. I think what this means, again, is that because his Q will apply his passive, I think that means it deals his passive's damage. I haven't looked that much into this, so basically the general idea here is they've swapped around a bunch of his stats. I'll make a video on this later because I can't really go over all of this right now. His ult and his W swapped. Abyssal dive, he now dives, goes up, stuns people. It's now a basic ability. The cooldown is now 21 to 17. So he's got a gap closer that also does a little bit of a stun. He can engage, they're trying to change him around a little bit. What do I think of this? It's interesting, but I'm really going to need to see it. The Mundo rework I was really excited for, and that died at high ranks. That died. That's not viable at all. So, I'm not getting my hopes up for another new viable champion, especially a tank in a meta where everyone's going Lord Dominic's Regards or Cyrilda's Grudge or Void Staff, and tanks are dead. Except for Shen. Shen's fine. Viego is getting a nerf to his ability to heal off minions, but he's getting more movement speed on his E, and his E is going to be bigger and shoot faster. And they're trying to nerf Viego mid and buff his jungle, but I thought his jungle was already pretty good, and personally I think this champion just needed a flat nerf, period. I think he just needed a nerf, and they're not just giving him a nerf, so great. Xayah's getting a buff to her Q. She buffs Q later. In fact, last. So, okay. I think you might see Q first max Xayah, because now it's going up to 300 damage instead of 250. That's an additional 50 damage if you max it. I don't think it's really going to change that much. I think Xayah, as a champion, lacks a lot of agency, that she needs her team to stun people for her, especially with her shorter range. I don't want to see Xayah come back really either, because she lacks agency and mobility. They typically just overstat the crap out of her damage, so she one-shots anyone she gets in range of. That's not really fun to fight. It's not fun to fight a champion who basically has no mobility, but they're kind of like a roving death platform, and if you get close, they just do 10 trillion DPS. Like a Kog'Maw, but with less range. Here are the new items. Now, I put out a video about these, so if you want to see more about that, go look at that video. Basically, here are my preemptive thoughts. Anathema's chains can give you up to 30% damage reduction. Unlike what a lot of people were saying, it stacks up to 30% over 60 seconds, not over 30 minutes like people were saying. I don't know what is up with that. So this item is a good bit of health, a good bit of ability haste, gives you up to 30% damage reduction against one enemy after a minute. So you can't just be at the end of a team fight and swap it. I'm sure most people will try to swap it because, like, why wouldn't you? You know, even if you can get an additional 4% damage reduction, I'm going for that swap at the end of the team fight just on the off chance I get that win in, right? So if you have stacked it against one enemy, at full stacks, it gives them negative tenacity, so your stuns will last longer, gives you damage reduction against them. This, I'm not going to say this brings tanks back, but it, at the very least, it's a very interesting item, not from its ability to be an anti-split push. I don't think it's an anti-split push item. It definitely will shut down a split pusher 100%, but because split pushing, despite Hullbreaker coming out, and I'll get to that in a second, despite split pushing being pushed, it's kind of a dead strategy anyway. I think what this is primarily going to be used for is tanks on an 80 carry. So if I'm doing a Kog'Maw team or I'm doing something like that, and I'm playing Shen, I can put this on Kog'Maw, and that Kog'Maw is going to be like, So yeah, it seems like a decent add to the game, especially at 2,500 gold. Is it going to get nerfed? Maybe, actually. Unlike Hullbreaker, I look at this item, and I'll get to Hullbreaker in a second, okay? Unlike Hullbreaker, I look at this item, and I actually see a very good item. That health is good in a meta where tanks lack health. That ability haste is good. The cost is great. This active is fantastic. If I'm fighting, and let's say I'm playing a tank against, I don't even know, let's say, I mean, who kills me in a team fight, right? I can check that, and I can put Anathema's chains on them. Not only does this allow me to stun the crap out of them, and here's a big thing, the support champion goes this item, that's a lot of health, that's a lot of ability haste. Now, if I am fighting, let's say, an Echo, and I'm playing Leona, the ability to give negative tenacity to Echo and be able to stun him for longer and peel him better, that's a pretty big deal. It also means that they can't really afford to kill me. No one can really afford to kill any champion who's got 30% reduced damage against them. Just to be clear, when you math that out, if you take 30% reduced damage to someone, that means they need to do 50% more damage to kill you. So if I killed a tank, let's say it took me 5 seconds to kill a tank. With Anathema's chains, it would mean that I would now need 7.5 seconds to kill a tank. Going from 5 seconds to 7.5 seconds in a team fight is a long stretch of time. So to cut this short, this item's looking good. Yeah. Hullbreaker is, I think they were a little bit careful on Hullbreaker because originally it was going to 400 HP. Now they're dropping it to 300. So this item, unlike Anathema's chains, I'm not liking so much. The reason for this is if you compare it to Starrick's Gauge, if we have Starrick's Gauge here and we have Hullbreaker here, and you go one of them, because neither of them have ability haste, so you can really afford to only go one of them, okay? Starrick's Gauge is 100 more HP. It has the 2% health healing, which is basically going to equal out to the health regen anyway, okay? They both do the same damage. So from the perspective of running up and beating the crap out of each other, this item has 100 less HP. Now, it does give the armor and magic resist. Starrick's Gauge gives that little bit of shield. Armor and magic resist in the current meta are not extremely useful. The reason for that is because basically every champion in the game that does damage, that is actually worth building damage against, has a way to avoid it. There's a reason that despite Gargoyle, Stoneplate, and Sunfire and items like that being able to drive you to like 400 armor, 200 magic resist, tanks aren't good. There's a reason for that, because those stats are being destroyed. Between Lord Dominic's Regards, between things like Void Staff, almost every champion can get a way to beat up armor. Now, I'm not saying armor and magic resist are bad. Certainly being able to get both of them does mean in a split push scenario, I can help with this. The issue is 300 HP and 45 armor. That is not that tanky. Just to be clear, if I was to fight someone in a 1v1 and I was a bruiser, okay? Compare this to Death's Dance. If I'm fighting a Riven, for example, I get 300 HP and 45 armor as Aatrox. Now, does that sound that much better than Death's Dance? Instead of having the reduction on physical damage, instead of having the ability haste, I get 300 HP. If I'm trying to fight someone 1v1, there is inevitably going to be a better item I can purchase. If I'm playing Jax and I'm fighting a Mage, Withstand is better, for example. And the only reason this is really that great is it gives both, but this item basically requires you to already be stronger than your opponent. It does give you the large minions gain armor and magic resist and deal bonus damage to turrets. It does give you the 20% increased damage to turrets, but I don't see this item being good enough to change the meta. I see it being annoying at the low ranks, and I see it being really annoying with super minions, but I don't really see it changing the meta. At the lower ranks where split pushing is already good, this item will help them have split pushing be better. At the higher ranks where split pushing is dead, what does this item give me? When you actually math it out, it looks scary, but it doesn't do that much. I think on champions that are already extremely good at split pushing, let's say Fiora, this item will be decent. But even on some of these champions, what item would you take out to put this in? That becomes the question. And unlike this one, Anathema's Chains looks like this is a real item that a lot of people, this fills a niche. This gives you a role, right? Hullbreaker, it also gives him a way to push through tanks and towers. I don't really see that one either. Even at level 18, that's 300 HP, 45 armor, 45 magic resist. That's less armor and magic resist than a Gargoyle's Stoneplate by a good chunk with no shield. It does give you the 50 damage, but no ability haste. I feel like they were being a little bit too cautious. Also, why doesn't it say the total cost? I think they were being too cautious. At 400 HP, 20 armor, 20 magic resist, that seems okay. At 300, it starts to really enter that territory of, wouldn't it just be better to build a different item? One of the only things I look at this and I think, wow, okay, this is great, is the large minions gain 60 to 135 armor magic resist. Now that one's good because this one gives non-split pushing champions a way to destroy turrets much easy, especially if you have Baron buff. But now the question becomes, how do you get Baron buff if you're split pushing? Right? I don't know. I could talk about this for a while, and I won't, but I could. So, yeah. Now, on to mobility items. Now, I've put out a video, so once again, I'm not going to talk that much about it. Stridebreaker no longer has a dash. Whoopee, that should be a big deal. That's a big deal. Okay, Stridebreaker no longer has a dash, but it gains 400 HP. Now, in my original video, and I've talked about this item twice now in videos, in my original video, I mentioned that it looked decent. Since then, they've slashed its attack damage, they've slashed its damage from the active. Personally, it looks okay. I think there are definitely some champions that this is going to be good on. What I don't think, though, is I don't think any of the champions who use it right now will be able to use it. Garen might, just because, you know, a slow for Garen is good, but Darius doesn't care about a slow, just as an example. So Stridebreaker is going to be a bit of a question mark. I'm not really sure who this is for. When they reduced its damage, I felt they might have been going a little bit too far. I think what they should have done is increased its attack speed to 30% when they were doing these changes. That would have at least pushed it. I think they were afraid of assassins getting it, but if it had 30, even 35% attack speed, that would have pushed it firmly into the bruiser category and kept it away from assassins. Now its damage got slapped, and it doesn't really seem. It's just a slow. And I think. I mean, some champions like Renekton may be able to use it to catch 80 carries, but it was serving a purpose of being a hard counter. One thing I should just reiterate that one thing it served as a hard counter for was ranged characters on the split push. The fact that you could Stridebreaker and basically shut them down was kind of a really big deal. Well, now it doesn't really do that as hard, so I think it might maybe be a good thing against champions like Quinn, Teemo, etc., so that they can't just permakite you. But I think I think they're gonna buff this item. I think they nerfed it a bit too hard since I last talked about it. I think they're gonna buff it. I think they're just keeping it a bit weaker now because they're afraid. Because a 90% decaying slow is a bit scary, but there's a lot of ways to beat slows, either through using escape moves or through using phase rush, things like that, and it doesn't really seem that scary right now. I mean, it's now directly competing with Gore Drinker and giving less damage than Gore Drinker and no damage passive, and still it's only giving 20% attack speed, gives the same damage on the active as Gore Drinker, same cooldown as Gore Drinker, only 20 movement speed. Its mythic bonus got nerfed as well. I mean, when you look at it, is a slow worth losing the healing of Gore Drinker and the damage? And I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, eh, eh. Some champions like Set might be able to, but I mean, when I'm struggling to think of who can use this, maybe this comes out and this is like a huge come from behind, huge, I don't know, but no, whatever. So they have a bunch of nerfs on all the items, mind you. There's a huge mobility nerf. So Gale Force got the same movement nerfed, Lichbane got its movement nerfed, Cosmic Drive got its movement nerfed, Black Cleaver got its movement nerfed. It did get a little bit more HP though. Dead Man's Plate, this item is dead. Now, let me explain to you why this item is dead. The build-up duration was only 5 seconds, not 8. So it's going 5 to 4, which they seem to think that the build-up duration going to half is kind of like a huge deal. It's not. In addition, the max movement speed, Riot seems to think that this is good, because you're getting your movement speed faster, even if you have less of it, but that, no, it was 5 seconds, not 8. I think they totally were too stupid to know that it was 5 seconds. But they designed the game. So this is a bit of a question mark from Riot. Do they really not know? I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I think they destroyed Dead Man's Plate because they literally don't know that it was 5 seconds, not 8. That's embarrassing. Additionally, you might think that the physical damage per stack, now counting your bonus, your base AD, is a huge deal. Once you math it out, and I'm not going to show you guys the math, but I have mathed it out, this is barely a damage increase at all, if a damage increase. In a lot of situations, it's about even, and in most situations, you're getting like maybe 10 to 20 more damage after armor and magic resist are taken into account. The big thing is that it's going from magic damage to physical damage, and magic damage is worth a lot more. So this is bad because its movement got brutalized and its damage barely got touched for an item that was practically for an item that wasn't really even being built anymore after they nerfed it so hard. Now they're nerfing it again. Ugh. So here is a good change. Trinity is losing 5 movement speed for 5 damage. Is that a good change? I feel like they should probably have nerfed Sunderer, but I would probably like to see it get more health at some point. This item should really get more health. I don't know why they keep making it higher and higher damage. Eventually this is just going to be a one-shot item if they keep sticking more damage onto it, and it still won't give you enough health to actually be worth building. Not everyone is a one-shot assassin. Some champions that want to use Trinity they actually kind of want to be tankier. So I think they should probably just have pushed this to 300 HP rather than pushing even more damage onto it. This dance, I think, is actually kind of a nerf. So we're going to 15% max health from 10, but it's losing the 30% movement speed. It's neat, but I don't know. This one's a bit of a trade-off for me. On an item that already was practically unusable and nobody was building, this feels a bit trade-offy to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think this is going to help this dance, and it was already not that great. Surely is just getting nerfed. Straight up nerfed. It's no longer 60% decaying to 30%. It's not just 30% flat. They wanted to nerf it. It was too good. It's getting nerfed. Prowler's Claw. Now, this is important. Prowler's Claw, originally when they unveiled these changes, they only showed that Prowler's Claw was getting its cooldown increased. Now it's getting its cooldown increased, and the lethality is going down. While it might not feel like a lot, this item losing 3 lethality and getting the cooldown increased is a really good thing. This item had, for some reason, it had 3 more lethality than any of the other items, and I don't know why. So this item's getting nerfed, and this is a good nerf. I think 80 assassins were using this item to one-shot everyone. 3 lethality isn't a huge deal, but it is a nerf that it needed. Additionally, the cooldown going up again. This means that they might actually have to wait a little bit. They won't be able to just, you know, at 60 seconds, there was basically no time ever that it wasn't going to be up between fights. This is actually adding a cooldown, and they're nerfing it one time. This is good. So this is a good nerf. They're buffing mana. There's a whole issue with mages I don't want to get into right now, but basically, the mana cost, or the gold cost on mana mage mythics is going down by 200. Not a big deal. Moonstone Renewer is getting a little bit more heal and shield power per stack. They're just pushing it. They're pushing Shirley's down, and they're pushing this up. So, yeah, that's basically it. Divine Sunder is getting nerfed on ranged champions. Shockingly, Ezreal and Senna being extremely overpowered with this item wasn't very fun. I think Ezreal's still going to be a little bit overpowered, obviously. He's crazy broken right now. But this is a decent hit down for them. I would also like to have seen it nerfed on melee a little bit, but whatever. As for runes, Nimbus Cloak is finally getting a nerf. After 2 years of this item, or sorry, this rune kind of being dominant, it's now finally getting a nerf. A real nerf. No longer will Flash and Nimbus Cloak basically read, you don't die anymore. Ghost Burrow is getting a buff. I'm not really sure what this is going to do. I'm going to be honest, this item, rune seemed a bit turrets. Now, this one is actually important. So the inner turrets, so the 2 on the top and the bottom, the inner ones, not the Nexus turrets, but the inner turrets, now grant an additional 250 gold. That's really good. These weren't really the biggest deal to kill, and now it means split pushers get buffed. It's a big deal. 250 gold doesn't seem like a huge amount, but if I'm split pushing, this could push me into getting an item much quicker. It's basically killing the turret is now worth almost a kill on a player in addition. That's a big deal. This is a big deal. In addition with the item buffing split pushing, which again is dubiously good. It could, I don't know. Maybe that item is a lot better than I'm giving it credit. I could be wrong. I'm not perfect. Okay? This in combination with that item might make things different though, because being able to split push and then generate more gold off split pushing, that's a 1-2 combo. As your smite is buffed, or smite is nerfed against minions. Basically what Riot was noticing is when you got the 900 damage smite early, you could kill minions. They're saying here, Heimer turrets, Daisy, Maiden, Tibbers, you were killing them basically instantly. So the level 6 ultimate minions or Heimer turrets were just dying to smite instantly. I mean, in fact, Heimer's big turret was dying. So basically they're trying to say, stop killing the rank 1 ultimate pets. So it's being there from 900 to 500 plus 10% of their health, which that's, yeah, they would need a good chunk of HP for that to equal out. Here's some ARAM changes. I don't care. Here's some bug fixes. They're making Windows E a bit smoother. That's good because that one did not feel smooth. Fixing some changes with that. They're fixing some changes with that. Some of the changes. I don't think. I think I read these. I don't think there's anything here that changes anything. Yeah. And then there's some skins. They're okay. Astronaut Maokai, Astronaut Vigar, Astronaut Ramis, Astronaut Corky, Prestige Zed. Expect all the Zed weebs to be getting their prestige skins now all over. What's your takeaway from this patch? What should you be taking away from this patch? Okay, so as a whole, you should be taking away, I guess, as big changes that you should be considering. Let's go over them. So Smite no longer kills level 1 pets instantly, but it pretty much does. I mean, even if they only have 500 HP, it'll still do 600 damage rather than 900. Mostly gonna kill them, just not entirely. Ghost Power, a little bit of a buff, not a big deal. Nimbus Cloak, rank 5, Flash, Nimbus Cloak nerfed. That's a big deal. Divine Sunder and Range Champions, nerfed. Still build it on Israel. Don't think that this means don't build it on Israel. Still build it on Israel, just less powerful. Winsor Renewer, a little bit of a buff. Mana Mythics, these aren't really that big a deal. The movement speed nerfs. Big takeaway, Stridebreaker, no longer gap closer. Big deal. Remember that. Dead Man's also pretty much dead. Dead Man's Prowler's Claw, a little bit of a nerf. Not enough that you won't build it, but it does hit AD Assassins a little bit. Here we see Hullbreaker. That's kind of a big deal. Once again, Split Pushers pushed. Split Pushters. Anathema's change. This is probably the biggest issue. This is the biggest thing of this entire patch. Anathema's change. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. Xayah, maybe you max Q first now? Probably not. Viego, pretty much dead in the solo lane. Tahm Kench rework. I'll make a video on this, but Tahm Kench got reworked. Consider that one too. Rumble can no longer jungle. Big deal. And ignore that. Yeah, not a big deal. And Lee Sin probably bad in the solo lane, but probably still good, actually. Kayn can't invisible W. Big deal. Fellows, a little bit of buff. Not that big a deal. So that's it. That's patch 11.13. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing to my Patreon, because the Patreon enables me to do these videos and not have to worry about, you know, a lot of things. Patreon people are very, very nice, and they are great people, but everyone is also nice and a great person. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for everything. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.